I woke up abruptly, sweat dripping from my brow. I could feel the presence again. His presence. I looked around my room. I know I'm being watched. It's not anywhere to be seen. Damn. This is the third night in a row I've been awoken like this. The fear is starting to take over my mind. Something out there is stalking me. Something wants me. But I should back up and tell this from the beginning. I'm 16 years old and moved into this house with my family 7 years ago. It's about 30 minutes outside of town, so we're fairly isolated, and my parents love living out here. They say it's peaceful and pretty, and I hate it. Not as much during the day as during the night. I've always been scared of the dark. It's my #1 phobia. I hate not being able to see, and out here at night there's no light other than the moon and stars. No warm, comforting glow of street lamps, no headlights slowly moving up and down the streets, just a hazy darkness. And it's especially dark during the new moon. And that's when I first encountered it. That thing. I have a bunch of friends over, and after dark, we all decided to play some airsoft capture the flag. It was a new moon, which made it especially dark and creepy. No light pierced the inky blackness, except for the flashlight on the barrel of our airsoft pistols, and the occasional zip of glow in the dark airsoft pellets flying at their targets. We were all having a great time. I had grabbed the other team's flag and was rushing back to my base when I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. A scream of terror, coming from about 30 feet to my right. A flash of white was rushing away from the sound. I changed direction and rushed towards the noise, aiming my flashlight at the source of the sound. My friend Jacob was sitting in the dirt, holding his bleeding leg, obviously in pain. The cut was deep. Another friend, Matt, and I rushed him inside, where we sat on the edge of the bathtub and began to wash and dress the cut. We asked him what happened. He said some creature had scratched him. He didn't get a good look at it, but saw a flash of white. At first, I assumed that it was just a possum or something. That was before I saw it again. The second time, I was alone. It was the middle of the night, not a new moon, thankfully, but still eerie, and I had insomnia, a rather common problem for me. It was 2 a.m., and I had given up all hope of getting any sleep, so I was downstairs in the living room and popped in a DVD. As I lay on the couch, my mind lost in the world of Inception, one of my dogs started barking. I thought nothing of it. Barking in the middle of the night is basically a routine for them. And my other dog joined in. No big deal. But I noticed something. The bark was a lot more menacing than usual. It was more of a guttural, growling bark. The bark dogs make when threatened. And I turned on the back porch light and stepped outside, creeped out. I called for them. "Jake! Zoe! Come here!" Then I saw what they were barking at. It looked like a human crouched there in the grass. It was probably around 4 feet tall, with bare, pale skin and long, bony limbs. I studied it for about 5 seconds, and it stared back at me. I'll never forget its eyes, dark, almost like empty sockets. Its cold gaze washed over me, as if it was sizing me up. Then I slowly started to move towards me. I was almost paralyzed by fear, but was able to get back into the house. I locked the door behind me and rushed to my parents' room. They were convinced that I had a nightmare, but I know the truth. This was the first time that I had fully seen the creature that would soon push me to the brink of sanity. I didn't see that thing again for quite some time. I started to think that maybe my parents were right and it was just a dream. I was really sleep deprived after all, but deep down inside I knew that I had seen something. But a few weeks ago, I was on some website with my friend Derek, and I saw a picture that shocked me. It was my creature, the one that I had seen. The website claimed that this creature was called the Rake, that it stalks and mauls its victims. The moment I saw the article, my blood ran cold. Could I have really seen this creature? The thought haunted me, refusing to leave my mind. I saw it again for the first time in months last week. I had woken up in the middle of the night again. Immediately, I felt that something was wrong. The house was too quiet. I felt very unsettled. I got out of bed, walked to the window, and raised the blinds. It was very dark outside, but I could make something out. The creature was outside, scratching at something on the ground. Immediately, I opened my window and yelled at the thing. It looked up at me, caught my eyes for a moment, and then rushed off, crawling on all fours very close to the ground. When I went to see what it was scratching at the next morning, I found something that still chills me to the bone. The mangled, half-eaten corpse of my dog Zoe. My parents think that it was a mountain lion, but I know the truth. This so-called Rake, the bastard creature, it killed my dog. The last few nights have been terrifying. I've woken up in a cold sweat each night, knowing that the damn thing is watching me. I feel its presence. I know that it wants me now, and I have no idea what to do. I'm terrified beyond belief, and I'm helpless. My parents keep telling me I'm imagining things, but I'm not. Damn it! I know what I've seen, and I know that it wants me. That's why I'm recording this at 3 in the morning. If anything happens to me, I want people to know what. I'll update as soon as something else happens. May 2nd, 2012. The last week was a whirlwind of terror. I'm constantly in fear now. I know it's always watching me around every corner, everywhere I go. Every night I feel its presence, some nights more than others, and I don't know exactly what it wants from me, but it is wanting something. I saw it again for the first time in a week today. I stayed home sick. I still feel like shit, and I think it's making me sick. I'm lying on the couch, watching TV, constantly looking over my shoulder because I know that he's always watching me, and I have a shotgun by my side, a benefit of living in the country. I got it from the garage. It's loaded in case the thing which I've decided to call the Rake, tries to attack. I knew it would soon. I heard a noise outside and cocked my gun. I stepped outside to investigate. Nothing. Damn it. I decided to patrol the perimeter of the house, just in case. Walked all the way around. And nothing. I stepped back inside. The smell hit me. It was the stench of death. Rotting. I held the gun out in front of me, slowly made my way up the stairs, and turned the corner into my room. It was crouching in the corner, facing away from me. It slowly tilted its head towards me. Then it spoke. It was a high, shrill voice. I'm not sure exactly what it said to me. I didn't hesitate to pull the trigger, but it moved almost at superhuman speed and barreled into me, knocking me down. I saw it jump off our second-floor balcony to the living room floor. I charged out of my door. My arm was bleeding bad, so I grabbed his shirt, pushed it into my arm to try to stop the blood. I rushed outside, the gun still in my hand. It was gone. "Go to hell!" I screamed. I stepped back inside and saw the blood. Not my blood. Its blood. I grabbed the dog that it hadn't killed, Jake, put his nose to the blood. He picked up the scent, started moving towards the woods near my house. I didn't think twice, and followed. We rushed through the woods, around a mile away from the house. Jake started to whimper. I sent him back. This was my job. I started to explore the area, my fingers twitching on the trigger, terrified. After about an hour of searching, I saw something weird. A small area of ground that was different. It seemed covered up. I walked over and swept away the grass. I was right. There was a board under the grass. I pulled up the board, exposing a hole. A rusty old ladder led down. Against all better judgment, curiosity got the better of me, and I slung the shotgun over my back and lowered myself down. I was in a tunnel. It wasn't well lit. A few candles, but it was light enough to see a blood-smeared wall. The smell was awful. I could see paintings on the wall, disturbing things, stuff I never wanted to see. I walked through, towards the source of more light, and I could see a sort of room. And when I stepped in it, I wanted to throw up. There was animal parts all over the floor. On the walls. This must be its feeding room. I turned around, retching. And there it stood. Right behind me. It reached towards me. And I blacked out. I woke up in my room. About 30 minutes ago. Alone. No cut on my arm. No blood anywhere. Decided to record everything while it's still fresh in my mind. Parents still aren't home. It's dark outside. I'm terrified to leave my room now. Maybe it didn't happen. Maybe I'm going insane. Paranoia is here to stay. I realized what the rake had to say in my room now. When he talked to me, it was wanting sacrifice. Mom, Dad, if you hear this, after I'm gone, just get the hell away. I don't know where to, but just leave this place. May 7th, 2012. It's over now. He's satisfied. Sacrifice is made. And I'm alone. He was with me. Three nights. He just stands next to my bed, watches me, and sometimes he'll whisper to me. He told me that he wanted sacrifice. Bloody sacrifice. He said I just had to do it. I knew he was right. It didn't matter to me. I could be alone. My parents thought I was just going crazy. Little did they know. Little did they know. So, last night, I told him. I told him that I'd do it. And I'd give him a sacrifice. A good sacrifice. So he'll be happy. I told him to come with me. I wanted to show them the spot that I had found. They walked with me. Walked to the rake's hole, and I opened it up. I opened it up, and I pulled out a gun. I told them to get into it. They asked me what I was doing, so I told them that he wanted to see them, and they went into the hole, and we walked through the tunnel. She was crying, and then Mr. Rake comes out of his hiding place, and he looks at me with his black eyes, and he smiled, and then he killed them. Oh, yeah, I mean, they screamed a little bit, but I didn't care. He was happy now. He pointed at the hole, and I knew that It was time for me to leave. And I'm back home now. I'm all alone in my dark room, and I'm not scared of the dark anymore. I mean, I like the dark. It reminds me of my friend. Of my friend the Rake. I mean, I'm okay, damn it. I'm okay. Damn it, I'm not okay. I led my parents to their death. I'm crazy. Oh God. I have the gun to my head now. I'm gonna pull the trigger. I'm looking across my room and he's crouching there, smiling at me, telling me to do it. He's still hungry. He wants one more sacrifice. And I'm gonna give it to him. Goodbye. Peter Terry was addicted to heroin. We were friends in college and continued to be after I graduated. Notice that I said I, as he dropped out after 2 years of barely cutting it. After I moved out of the dorms and into a small apartment, I didn't see Peter as much. We would talk online every now and then. AIM was king in pre-Facebook years. And there was a period where he wasn't online for about 5 weeks straight. I wasn't worried. He was a pretty notorious flake and a drug addict, so I assumed that he just stopped caring. And then one night, I saw him log on. And before I could initiate a conversation, he sent me a message. "David, man, we need to talk." And that's when he told me about the No End House. It got that name because no one had ever reached the final exit. The rules were pretty simple and cliche. Reach the final room of the building and you win $500. There were 9 rooms in all. The house was located outside the city, roughly 4 miles from my house. Apparently, Peter had tried and failed. He was a heroin and who knows what the fuck addict, so I figured that the drugs got the best of him. And he wigged out at a paper ghost or something. He told me it would be too much for anyone. That it was unnatural. I didn't believe him. I told him I would check it out the next night, and no matter how hard he tried to convince me otherwise, $500 sounded too good to be true. I had to go. I set out the following night. When I arrived, I immediately noticed something strange about the building. Have you ever seen or read something that shouldn't be scary, but for some reason, a chill crawls up your spine? I walked towards the building, and the feeling of uneasiness only intensified as I opened the front door. My heart slowed, and I let a relieved sigh leave me as I entered. The room looked like a normal hotel lobby decorated for Halloween. A sign was posted in place of a worker. It read, "Room 1, this way. 8 more follow. Reach the end and you win." I chuckled and made my way to the first door. The first area was almost laughable. The decor resembled the Halloween aisle of a Kmart, complete with sheet ghosts and animatronic zombies that gave a static growl when you passed by. At the far end was an exit. It was the only door besides the one I entered through. I brushed through the fake spider webs and headed for the second room. I was greeted by fog as I opened the door to the next room. The room definitely upped the ante in terms of technology. Not only was there a fog machine, but a bat hung from the ceiling and flew in circles. Scary. They seemed to have a Halloween soundtrack that one would find in the 99-cent store on loop somewhere in the room. I didn't see a stereo, but I guess they must have used a PA system. I stepped over a few toy rats that wheeled around and walked with a puffed chest across to the next area. I reached for the doorknob. And my heart sank to my knees. I did not want to open that door. A feeling of dread hit me so hard that I could barely even think. Logic overtook me after a few terrified moments, and I shook it off and entered the next room. Room 3 is when things began to change. On the surface, it looked like a normal room. There was a chair in the middle of the wooden paneled floor. A single lamp in the corner did a poor job of lighting the area, casting a few shadows across the floor and walls. That was the problem. Shadows. Plural. With the exception of the chairs, there were others. I had barely walked in the door, and I was already terrified. It was at that moment that I knew something wasn't right. I didn't even think as I automatically tried to open the door that I came through. It was locked from the other side. That set me off. Was something locking the doors as I progressed? There was no way. I would have heard them. Was it a mechanical lock that's set automatically? Maybe. But I was too scared to really think. I turned back to the room, and the shadows were gone. The chair's shadow remained, but the others were gone. I slowly began to walk. I used to hallucinate when I was a kid, so I wrote off the shadows as a figment of my imagination. I began to feel better as I made it to the halfway point of the room. I looked down as I took my steps. And that's when I saw it. Or didn't see it. My shadow wasn't there. I didn't have time to scream. I ran as fast as I could to the other door and flung myself without thinking into the room beyond. The fourth room was possibly the most disturbing. As I closed the door, all light seemed to be sucked out and put back into the previous room. I stood there, surrounded by darkness, not able to move. I'm not afraid of the dark and never have been, but I was absolutely terrified. All sight had left me. I held my hand in front of my face, and if I didn't know what I was doing, I would never have been able to tell. Darkness doesn't describe it. I couldn't hear anything. It was dead silence. When you're in a soundproof room, you can still hear yourself breathing. You can hear yourself being alive. I couldn't. I began to stumble forward after a few moments, my rapid beating heart the only thing that I could feel. There was no door in sight. I wasn't even sure there was one this time. The silence was then broken by a low hum. I felt something behind me. I spun around wildly, but could barely even see my nose. I knew it was there, though. Regardless of how dark it was, I knew something was there. The hum grew louder. Closer. It seemed to surround me, but I knew whatever was causing the noise was in front of me, inching closer. I took a step back. I had never felt that kind of fear. I can't really describe true fear. I wasn't even scared I was going to die. I was scared of what the alternative was. I was afraid of what the thing had in store for me. Then the lights flashed for a second and I saw it. Nothing. I saw nothing, and I know I saw nothing there. The room was again plunged into darkness, and the hum became a wild screech. I screamed in protest. I couldn't hear the goddamn sound for another minute. I ran backwards away from the noise and fumbled for the door handle. I turned and fell into room 5. Before I describe room 5, you have to understand something. I am not a drug addict. I've had no history of drug abuse or any sort of psychosis short of the childhood hallucinations that I mentioned earlier, and those were only when I was really tired or just waking up. I entered the no-end house with a clear head. After falling in from the previous room, my view from room 5 was from my back looking up at the ceiling. What I saw didn't scare me. It simply surprised me. Trees had grown into the room and towered above my head. The ceilings in this room were taller than the others, which made me think that I was in the center of the house. I got up off the floor, dusted myself off, and took a look around. It was definitely the biggest room of them all. I couldn't even see the door from where I was. Various brush and trees must have blocked my line of sight with the exit. Up to this point, I figured the rooms were going to get scarier, but this was a paradise compared to the last room. I also assumed whatever was in room 4 stayed back there. I was incredibly wrong. As I made my way deeper into the room, I began to hear what one would hear if they were in a forest. Chirping bugs and the occasional flap of birds seemed to be my only company in this room. That was the thing that bothered me the most. I heard the bugs and other animals, but I didn't see any of them. I began to wonder how big this house was. From the outside, when I first walked up to it, it looked like a regular house. It was definitely on the bigger side, but this was almost a full forest in here. The canopy covered my view of the ceiling, but I assumed it was still there, however high it was. I couldn't see any walls either. The only way I knew I was still inside was that the floor matched the other rooms, the standard dark wood paneling. I kept walking, hoping that the next tree I passed would reveal the door. After a few moments of walking, I felt a mosquito fly onto my arm. I shook it off. A second later, I felt about 10 more land on my skin at different places. I felt them crawl up and down my arms and legs, and a few made their way across my face. I flailed wildly to get them all off, but they just kept crawling. I looked down and let out a muffled scream. No, more of a whimper, to be honest. I didn't see a single bug. Not one bug was on me, but I could feel them crawl. I heard them fly by my face and sting my skin, but I couldn't see a single one. I dropped to the ground and began to roll wildly. I was desperate. I hated bugs, especially ones I couldn't see or touch, but these bugs could touch me, and they were everywhere. I began to crawl. I had no idea where I was going. The entrance was nowhere in sight, and I still hadn't even seen the exit, so I just crawled, my skin wriggling with the presence of those phantom bugs. After what seemed like hours, I felt the door. I grabbed the nearest tree and propped myself up, mindlessly slapping my arms and legs to no avail. I tried to run, but I couldn't. My body was exhausted from crawling and dealing with whatever it was that was on me. I took a few shaky steps to the door, grabbing each tree on the way for support. It was only a few feet away when I heard it. The low hum from before. It was coming from the next room, and it was deeper. I could almost feel it inside of my body, like when you stand next to an amp at a concert. The feeling of the bugs on me lessened as the hum grew louder. As I placed my hand on the doorknob, the bugs were completely gone. But I couldn't bring myself to turn the knob. I knew that if I let go, the bugs would return, and there was no way I would make it back to room 4. I just stood there, my head pressed against the door marked 6, and my hand shakily grasping the knob. The hum was so loud I couldn't even hear myself pretend to think. There was nothing I could do but move on. Room 6 was next. And room 6 was hell. I closed the door behind me. My eyes held shut and my ears ringing. The hum was surrounding me. As the door clicked into place, the hum was gone. I opened my eyes in surprise, and the door that I had shut was gone. It was just a wall now. I looked around in shock. The room was identical to room 3. Same chair and lamp, but with correct amount of shadows this time. The only real difference was that there was no exit door, and the one I came through was gone. As I said before, I had no previous issues in terms of mental instability, but at that moment, I fell into what I now know was insanity. I didn't scream. I didn't make a sound. At first, I scratched, softly. The walls were tough, but I knew the door was there somewhere. I just knew it was. I scratched it where the doorknob was. I clawed at the wall frantically with both hands. My nails were filed down to the skin against the wood. I fell silently to my knees, the only sound in the room, the incessant scratching against the wall. I knew it was there. The door was there. I knew it was there. I knew if I could just get past this wall. "Are you all right?" I jumped off the ground and spun in one motion. I leaned against the wall behind me, and I saw what it was that spoke to me. To this day, I regret ever turning around. There was a little girl. She was wearing a soft white dress that went down to her ankles. She had long blonde hair to the middle of her back, and white skin and blue eyes. She was the most frightening thing I had ever seen, and I know that nothing in my life will ever be as unnerving as what I saw in her. While looking at her, I saw something else. Where she stood, I saw what looked like a man's body, only larger than normal, and covered in hair. He was naked from head to toe, but his head was not human, and his toes were hoofs. It wasn't the devil. But at that moment, it might as well have been. The form had the head of a ram and the snout of a wolf. It was horrifying, and it was synonymous with the little girl in front of me. They were the same form. I can't really describe it, but I saw them at the same time. They shared the same spot in the room, but it was like looking at two separate dimensions. When I saw the girl, I saw the form. When I saw the form, I saw the girl. I couldn't speak. I could barely even see. My mind was revolting against what it was attempting to process. I'd been scared before in my life. I had never been more scared than when I was trapped in the 4th room, but that was before room 6. I just stood there staring at whatever it was that spoke to me. There was no exit. I was trapped here with it. And then it spoke again. "David, you should have listened." When it spoke, I heard the words of the little girl, but the other form spoke through my mind in a voice I won't attempt to describe. There was no other sound. The voice just kept repeating the sentence over and over and over again in my head, and I agreed. I didn't know what to do. I was slipping into madness, yet couldn't take my eyes off of what was in front of me. I dropped to the floor. I thought that I had passed out, but the room wouldn't let me. I just wanted it to end. I was on my side, my eyes wide open, and the form staring down at me, scurrying across the floor in front of me, was one of the battery-powered rats from the 2nd room. The house was toying with me. But for some reason, seeing that rat pulled my mind back from whatever depths it was headed. And I looked around the room. I was getting out of there. I was determined to get out of that house and live and never think about this place again. I knew this room was hell, and I wasn't ready to take up residency. At first, it was just my eyes that moved. I searched the walls for any kind of opening. The room wasn't that big, so it didn't take long to soak up the entire layout. The demon still taunted me, the voice growing louder as the form stayed rooted where it stood. I placed my hand on the floor, lifted myself up to all fours, and turned to scan the wall behind me. Then I saw something I couldn't believe. The form was now right at my back, whispering into my mind how I shouldn't have come. I felt its breath on the back of my neck, but I refused to turn around. A large rectangle was scratched into the wood, with a small dent chipped away in the center of it. Right in front of my eyes, I saw the large 7 I had mindlessly etched into the wall. I knew what it was. Room 7 was just beyond that wall where Room 5 was moments ago. I don't know how I'd done it. Maybe it was just my state of mind at the time, but I had created the door. I knew I had. In my madness, I had scratched into the wall what I needed the most, an exit to the next room. Room 7 was close. I knew the demon was right behind me, but for some reason it couldn't touch me. I closed my eyes and placed both hands on the large 7 in front of me. I pushed as hard as I could. The demon was now screaming in my ear. It told me that I was never leaving. It told me that this was the end, but I wasn't going to die. I was going to live there in room 6 with it. I wasn't. I pushed and screamed at the top of my lungs. I knew I was going to push through the wall eventually. I clenched my eyes shut and screamed, and the demon was gone. I was left in silence. I turned around slowly and was greeted by the room as it was when I entered. Just a chair. And a lamp. I couldn't believe it. But I didn't have time to waste. I turned back to the 7 and jumped back slightly. What I saw was a door. And it wasn't the one that I'd scratched in, but a regular door with a large 7 on it. My whole body was shaking. It took me a while to turn the knob. I just stood there for a while, staring at the door. I couldn't stay in room 6. I couldn't. But if this was only room 6, I couldn't imagine what 7 had in store. I must have stood there for an hour, just staring at the 7. And finally, with a deep breath, I twisted the knob and opened the door to room 7. I stumbled through the door, mentally exhausted and physically weak. The door behind me closed. And I realized where I was. I was outside. Not outside like room 5, but actually outside. My eyes stung. I wanted to cry. I fell to my knees and tried, but I couldn't. I was finally out of that hell. I didn't even care about the prize that was promised. I turned and saw that the door I just went through was the entrance. I walked to my car and I drove home thinking of how nice a shower sounded. I pulled up to my house. I felt uneasy. The joy of leaving No End House had faded. And dread was slowly building in my stomach. I shook it off as a residual from the house and made my way to the front door. I entered and immediately went up to my room. There on my bed was my cat, Baskerville. It was the first living thing that I'd seen all night, and I reached to pet him. He hissed and swiped at my hand. I recoiled in shock. He'd never acted like that. Whatever. He's an old cat, I thought. I jumped in the shower, get ready for what I was expecting to be a sleepless night. And after my shower, I went to the kitchen to make something to eat. I descended the stairs and turned to the family room. What I saw would be forever burned into my mind, however. My parents were lying on the ground, naked and covered in blood. They were mutilated to near unidentifiable states. Their limbs were removed and placed next to their bodies. Their heads were placed on their chests facing me. The most unsettling part was their expressions. They were smiling as though they were happy to see me. I vomited and sobbed there in the family room. I didn't know what had happened. They didn't even live with me at the time. I was a mess. And then I saw it. A door that was never there before. A door with a large 8 scrawled on it in blood. I was still in the house. I was standing in my family room, but I was in room 7. The faces of my parents smiled wider as I realized this. They weren't my parents, they couldn't be. But they looked exactly like them. The door marked 8 was across the room behind the mutilated bodies in front of me. I knew I had to move on, but at that moment I gave up. The smiling faces tore into my mind. They grounded me where I stood. I vomited again and nearly collapsed. Then the hum returned. It was louder than ever, and it filled the house and shook the walls. The hum compelled me to walk. I began to walk, slowly, making my way closer to the door and the bodies. I could barely stand, let alone walk. And the closer I got to my parents, the closer I came to suicide. The walls were now shaking so hard it seemed as though they were going to crumble, but still the faces smiled at me as I inched closer, their eyes following me. I was now between the 2 bodies, a few feet away from the door. The dismembered hands clawed their way across the carpet towards me. All the while the faces continued to stare. New terror washed over me, and I walked faster. I didn't want to hear them speak. I didn't want the voices to match those of my parents. They began to open their mouths, and the hands were inches from my feet. In a dash of desperation, I lunged towards the door, threw it open, and slammed it behind me. Room 8. I was done. After what I had just experienced, I knew there wasn't anything else this fucking house could throw at me that I couldn't live through. There was nothing short of fires of hell that I wasn't ready for. But unfortunately, I underestimated the abilities of a no-end house. Unfortunately, things got more disturbing, more terrifying, and more unspeakable in room 8. I still have trouble believing what I saw in room 8. Again, the room was a carbon copy of rooms 3 and 6, but sitting in the usual empty chair was a man. After a few seconds of disbelief, my mind finally accepted the fact that the man sitting in the chair was me. Not someone who looked like me. It was David Williams. I walked closer. I had to get a better look, even though I was sure of it. He looked up at me and I noticed tears in his eyes. Please. Please don't do it. Please. Please don't hurt me. What? I asked, who are you? I'm not going to hurt you. Yes, you are. He was sobbing. You're going to hurt me. And I don't want you to. He sat in the chair with his legs up and began rocking back and forth. It was actually pretty pathetic looking, especially since he was me, identical in every way. Listen, who are you? I was now only a few feet from my doppelganger. It was the weirdest experience yet. Standing there talking to myself. I wasn't scared, but I would be soon. Why are you? You're going to hurt me! You're going to hurt me! If you want to leave, you're going to hurt me. Why are you saying this? Calm down, alright? Let's just try and figure that... And then I saw it. The David sitting down was wearing the same clothes as me. Except for a small red patch on his shirt, embroidered with the number 9. You're going to hurt me! You're going to hurt me! Don't, please, you're going to hurt me! You're going to hurt me. You're going to hurt me. Please don't hurt me. Please. My eyes didn't leave that small number on his chest. I knew exactly what it was. The first few doors were plain and simple, but after a while they got a little more ambiguous. 7 was scratched into the wall. By my own hands, 8 was marked in blood above the bodies of my parents, but 9... 9. This number was on a person. A living person. Worse still, it was on a person that looked exactly like me. David? I had to ask. Yes. Yes. You're going to hurt me. You're going to hurt me. He continued to sob and rock. He answered to David. He was me, right down to the voice. But that 9... I paced around for a few minutes when he sobbed in his chair. The room had no doors, and similarly to room 6, the door I came through was gone. For some reason, I assumed the scratching would get me nowhere this time, and I studied the walls and the floor around the chair, sticking my head underneath, seeing if anything was below. Fortunately, there was. Below the chair was a knife. Attached was a tag that read, "To David, from management." The feeling in my stomach as I read that tag was something sinister. I wanted to throw up, and the last thing I wanted to do was remove the knife from under the chair. The other David was still sobbing uncontrollably. My mind was spinning into an attic of unanswerable questions. Who put this here? How did they get my name? Not to mention the fact that as I knelt on the cold wood floor, I also sat in that chair, sobbing in protest of being hurt by myself. It was all too much to process. The house and the management had been playing with me this whole time. My thoughts, for some reason, turned to Peter and whether or not he got this far. If he did, if he met a Peter Terry sobbing in this very chair, rocking back and forth with... I shook those thoughts out of my head. They didn't matter. I took the knife from under the chair, and immediately... the other David went quiet. "David," he said in my voice, "what do you think you're going to do?" I lifted myself from the ground and clutched the knife in my hand. "I'm going to get out of here." David was still sitting in the chair, though he was very calm now. He looked up at me with a slight grin. I couldn't tell if he was going to laugh or strangle me, and slowly he got up from the chair and stood facing me. It was uncanny. His height and even the way he stood matched mine. I felt the rubber hilt of the knife in my hand and gripped it tighter. I didn't know what I was planning. I didn't know what I was planning on doing with it, but I had a feeling that I was going to need it. Now, his voice was slightly deeper than my own. "I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to hurt you, and I'm going to keep you here." I didn't respond. I just lunged and tackled him to the ground. I had mounted him and looked down, knife poised and ready. He looked up at me, terrified. It was like I was looking in a mirror. And then the hum returned, low and distant, though I still felt it deep in my body. David looked up at me as I looked down at myself. The hum was getting louder, and I felt something inside of me snap. With one motion, I slammed the knife into the patch on his chest and ripped it down. Blackness fell in the room, and I was falling. Darkness around me was like nothing I had experienced. Up to that point, room 4 was dark, but it didn't come close to what was completely engulfing me. I wasn't even sure that I was falling after a while. I felt weightless, covered in black. And then a deep sadness came over me. I felt lost, depressed, and suicidal. The sight of my parents entered my mind. I knew it wasn't real, but I had seen it. And the mind had trouble differentiating between what was real and what wasn't. The sadness only deepened. I was in room 9 for what seemed like days. The final room. And that's exactly what it was. The end. No End House had an end, and I had reached it. And at that moment, I gave up. I knew that I would be in that in-between state forever, accompanied by nothing but darkness. Not even the hum was there to keep me sane. I had lost all senses. I couldn't feel myself. I couldn't hear anything. Sight was completely useless here. I searched for a taste in my mouth and found nothing. I felt disembodied and completely lost. I knew where I was. This was hell. Room 9 was hell. And then it happened. A light. One of those stereotypical lights at the end of the tunnel. I felt ground come up from below me, and I was standing. For a moment or two, gathering my thoughts and senses, I slowly walked towards the light. As I approached the light, it took form. It was a vertical slit down the side of an unmarked door. I slowly walked through the door and found myself back where I started. The lobby of No End House. It was exactly how I left it, still empty, still decorated with childish Halloween decorations after everything that had happened that night. I was still wary of where I was. After a few moments of normalcy, I looked around the place, trying to find anything different. And on the desk, was a plain white envelope with my name handwritten on it. Immensely curious but still cautious, I mustered up the courage to open the envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten. David Williams. Congratulations, you've made it to the end of No End House. Please accept this prize as a token of great achievement. Yours forever. Management. And with the letter were 5 $100 bills. I couldn't stop laughing. I laughed for what seemed like hours. I laughed as I walked out to my car. And I laughed as I drove home. And I laughed as I pulled up to my driveway. And I laughed as I opened my front door to my house. And I laughed as I saw the small 10 etched into the wood.
Hey everyone!
Hello, boys and girls.
Hi everybody!
Welcome to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza!
I'm Chica. Let's eat.
I'm your best friend, Bonnie Buddy here.
And everyone knows me, Freddy Fazbear!
Is everybody having a good time? Because I sure know that I am.
I could use some more, help me, more pizza.
There's plenty of delicious people, delicious pizza when you're at Freddy's Pizza, Chica.
You can't live off pizza all the time, Freddy.
You can't?
Can't leave.
When you're eating, kids, remember to have plenty of kids. Green, plenty of green vegetables, kids.
And all you young bunnies need to have your carrots. Please run.
Health is important if you want to live. Have a fun and happy
Children.
Fun and happy time at
Freddy
Fazbear's
Pizza. Hey, Chica.
Yeah, Bonnie?
You know what I do to have fun?
Is it the games?
Nope.
Is it the Don't Let Them Escape Pirates Cove?
Not even close.
Well, what is it, Bonnie?
I like to sing.
Why didn't you say so? Let's rock out the band.
1, 2, 1,
2,
3.
4. Hey, all you pirate fans, head on down to the Pirate Cove because the show's about to start. It's our good old pal, Foxy. Foxy.
Never accept me.
I know he's around here somewhere.
Always alone.
Maybe we need to call him out. Foxy.
Not one of them.
Help me out, kids. Foxy.
Eat them.
Last time, kids, nice and loud, so we can get him out here. Foxy!
Yar, me mateys, it's me, Foxy, and welcome to the Pirate's Cove. Freddy best be getting back to the stage, or I'll be forced to...
Gut the pig.
Forced to make him walk the plank.
Have fun, kids, and let's kill them. Keep ourselves safe when exploring Pirate Cove.
Yar! You best be getting back to the stage, land lover, because these little ones are now part of the Pirate's crew. When in the Pirate Cove, Remember to adventure safe, kiddies, and no running around the cove, or else ye be
Lost forever.
ye be walking the plank. Aye, is it swashbuckling adventures that ye be seeking, lads? Or is it that?
Don't belong here.
Or is it that you're not akin to the seven seas? All pirates, give me an arg.
Please help me.
Arg. I be seeing you already walking about with your pizza in hand and your sody pops like proper sea pirates. And like proper sea pirates do, we'll be having ourselves a sea shanty.
Weird. What happened to the legs on it, Mom?
That's nice, dear. Don't climb on it.
It has a hook for him. Look at the hook, Mom.
Little girl, sweetie, you can't get that close to Foxy. It's not, you really shouldn't be up there.
You're not my mom. You can't tell me what to do.
Ma'am, please ask your daughter to get off the stage.
She's not hurting anyone. Let her play with the fox if she wants to play with the fox.
Mom, look at his funny mouth. He's so stupid looking.
Oh God. Oh my God.
Hello?
Hey man, it's me.
Hey boss.
Hey Gordon, look. I know it's your last week and all, and college is important and everything, but you sure I can't convince you to stay on?
Sorry boss, them's the rules. If I want to keep my car, I have to raise my grades, and this job takes up too much valuable study time.
Yeah, I understand. Corporate's been getting on my butt as well since that incident with the kid.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. Scary stuff.
You're telling me. I was there. Saw the thing bit out the front of her head. The doctor said it took out a chunk of her brain. I told the little snot not to get close. But as well, I guess she'll listen better next time. Well, hey. Till corporate works out what to do, we have Foxy shut down. So keep the curtain closed on him. And the computer...
Whoa, hang on a second.
Everything okay?
Yeah, I just thought maybe I heard... Never mind. What's up?
I was gonna say, the computer guys had to come out today and change the chips, or the disks, or something in the animals. So there may be some, glitches.
Glitches?
Yeah. They wanted to make sure there's no more errors with the biting. So they changed the software to ensure that all the animatronic parts are covered at all times. They can't be without an animal suit. Also, they're changing the bunny's voice to being a girl's or something.
That's weird.
Yeah, I know. I guess corporate said it tested better or something. I don't know. If you see anything weird, don't freak out. The place isn't haunted. Yet.
Yeah, let's keep it that way.
I hear that. Let me know if anything interesting happens. I'll see you at 6.
Yeah, good night. Crap. What the hell? Someone better not have taken Freddy. There's Chica. There's Bonnie. Where the hell did the other one go?
Not me.
Hello? Hey, I'll call the cops.
Let's eat.
Holy
Let's eat.
God.
Some
Don't you
delicious
guys switch off at
pizza.
some point?
Hey everybody, it's time to start the show!
Let me out.
Jesus. The robot must have wandered off.
Hello, kids. It's your best bunny buddy.
Bunny buddy.
Escape now.
Bonnie, Are you having a good time at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza?
You're like me.
Because I sure am.
I guess all of them are breaking. Then ow! Crap! Let me go!
You can't eat pizza all the time. Sometimes you have to keep to the healthy snack.
What did you just say?
That's against the rules, buddy.
Let me go, you stupid machine!
Be good, or we're going to have to
Fix you.
have to tell your parents.
Ugh! God damn it! You almost broke my arm. Where's the off switch on this? Ah! What the hell?
You know what I
do for fun.
What I do for fun? I like to eat
I like to eat people.
pizza.
You're next.
Ah! What the hell? Has everything gone crazy? I need to call the computer techs back to fix this.
Forgotten me.
You're still here. Good. I guess they didn't upgrade you since you're out of order. Maybe the number's in the security room. At least I can get away from the...
Army matey.
What the fuck?
Rule breakers be walking no.
My fault.
Walking the plank.
Ah!
No running.
Join us.
The Pirates' Cold-Bloods.
What? Why isn't the door closing? Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Come on, man. Come on. What?
Hey, buddy. You're going to die like me. You're not following the rules.
Hello? Hello? Gordon?
The following conversations, audio recordings, and testimonies all pertain to the incident which occurred from October 7th to October 30th in the Aden County National Reserve and its outlying towns, Aden, and Greenvale. The first part contains both a series of emails between researchers Michael Hayes and Richard Harris.
Richie, I know that we haven't spoken in a long time and that you need your space, but earlier today, while me and my crew were digging for new mineral samples, we stumbled upon something huge. Get back to me as soon as you can. Michael.
Despite the creeping feeling that you're trying to get me to respond, I'll bite. What did you find? Oh, and what do you mean by new mineral samples? What happened to the old mineral samples?
Richie, what happened to the old samples isn't anything to worry about right now. We've got bigger things to discuss. As I had said in my previous email, me and my crew, that is to say a crew of 20 bored college grads, were digging up at the base of the tallest mountain in the park. I can't remember its name, when we found the entrance to the vault. Most of the kids were more interested in the view, which was, granted, a very nice one. But some of the kids were actually trying to earn their credit for a change, and it was this little group who called me over, rather suddenly, just as I was about to call it a day. Their voices were so loud, and their collective tone was both excited and frightened. I leaped from my chair and ran past a little cluster of trees to where they were. I found them all crowded around something that I couldn't make out until I was close enough, but when I saw what it was, I understood both of their reactions. The ground had collapsed where they had been digging, the loose soil falling away into a hole which had appeared out of nowhere. So I pushed past the whispering, frightened students and looked down, trying to see if someone had fallen in. Hoping that no one had, we're on a shoestring budget as it is without having to deal with a lawsuit, but I didn't see some deep, dark pit. I saw a set of stairs descending down into the darkness. A faint rush of cold air hit me when I leaned in for a closer look and I backed away. I've heard stories about toxic spores found in the tombs beneath the pyramids. So I went to my tent and retrieved my bandana, which I tied around my face, as well as my gloves, which I put on. I mean, I just had to see what was down there. I had to. I returned to find that some of the kids were already starting towards the stairs. I warned them off in my best, stern teacher voice and made sure that they had some form of protection as well as lights. I swear, I must be the only one who thinks these things through. I had one of the kids, a girl by the name of Lori Summers, go tell the others what we had found and what we intended to do, and when she came back, we started our exploration. The stairs led down farther than I had anticipated. The descent halted only by a few landings where we stopped and talked amongst each other. Or rather, the kids talked. I was too busy examining the floor, walls, and ceiling. And what I found is pretty damn strange. The material looked like obsidian. Now, I'm not an expert in archaeology, but I've never heard of a temple made of obsidian. Maybe you could share some of that knowledge with me? The stairs ended after a bit and we found ourselves in an antechamber. It was colder than a frost giant scrote down there, but the air was so still. Stagnant, even. Probably a good thing I wore my mask and gloves, eh? Anyway, from the antechamber we emerged into a short tunnel which led to a surprisingly spacious chamber. Everything was so dark that our flashlights did less than we'd have hoped. Thankfully, nobody got hurt. As it turned out, there were 5 chambers in total, just 5, which strikes me as more than a bit weird. But believe me, it got weirder from there. You see, the first 4 rooms held nothing. No dust, no furniture, no bodies, and no signs of animal life. I didn't even see a single spider or cobweb while I was down there. But the 5th room was different. The 5th room had something in it. I honestly have no idea what the hell it is. At first glance I thought it was a sarcophagus of some kind due to its shape, but when I got closer, I saw that this wasn't the case at all. It had a rudimentary face and body etched into it, but unlike the mummies' tombs that I've seen, the overall picture didn't add up to something human. I honestly can't really describe what was wrong with it, but everything about it looked off despite how it looked from a distance. The coffin is also made of metal, though I'll need to run a few tests to determine just what type of metal it is. We brought it back here and have been setting up the necessary equipment, but I think that this one will give us a bit more trouble than the usual fare, mostly because I can't see any way into the damn thing. I feel like one of those handsome adventurer scientists you'd see in a B-movie, looking over something new and interesting, waiting with bated breath to see what will come of this new find. It's so interesting. Maybe we can talk more in person, say, over dinner? Michael. Sorry I missed dinner. Work at the lab has yielded some unforeseen results, and me and most of my team have been feeling under the weather. I'm glad the kids let my team do the rest of the work. Don't think that I could stand to hear them whining about how much their heads hurt or how sick they've been feeling. I feel like crap in the usual flu-type way, but I haven't stopped working on opening that damned coffin or whatever it really is. It seems as though we've stumbled across something new. How many of us get to say that? So yes, my health is worth it. The samples, the metal from the coffin and the stone from the chamber, came back yesterday. I can safely say that I've never seen anything like it. As it turns out, the stone is obsidian in appearance only. It was apparently filled with microscopic bands of frozen liquid which has yet to yield a match to any known chemical compound, and I swear this is true. It's warm. Not room temperature, it's consistently stayed at 37 degrees Celsius. And the metal, every one of our tests has come up negative. Every single one. It looks and feels like metal, but it isn't. I don't have any idea what it is. This could be big, Richie, really big.
The last email was never sent. It was found as a saved draft on Mr. Hayes' computer.
Have you ever had a dream that was so bad you woke up in tears? I did last night. It was awful. So real. At first I thought I was on a seashore, but the ground was warm and moist beneath my feet, and when I looked down, I saw that instead of sand, there were pores and tiny hairs and purple veins. I looked at the sea and saw something that looked like water, but was stagnant and stank like an infected cut. And above me I saw a dark, cloudless red sky without stars or a moon. It was so real, I didn't think that I was going to wake up. Today at the lab, everyone went about their business without talking. I knew that something was wrong. Something was hanging over everyone's head like a guillotine waiting to fall. Some of my colleagues are irritable today. Many smell like they haven't washed and all have bags under their eyes. They're not listless, though. If anything, they're more intent on their work than they usually are. Most of them aren't even talking to each other. We've decided to open the coffin using strong acids to weaken the metal, or whatever it is, before taking a saw to it. We'll have it open in a few hours and then we can all rest.
The following is a transcription of the testimony of police officers Edmund Monroe, who was called to investigate the research facility after 2 weeks of no outside contact. It is November 3rd, and I am here with the witness. State your name and badge number for the record, sir.
Officer Edmund Thomas Moore. My badge number is... hold on. 0902453.
All right, you may proceed with your testimony.
Oh, can I? Can I really? It's only been 3 hours since we started. You FBI guys are exactly as uptight about rules as the movies say. Either that or you're unbelievably shitty at figuring out how recorders work.
The testimony, Officer Moore.
What? Is the newfangled computer thing too much for you to handle? You look like you're what, 20? 21? How the hell do you not know how to work a computer?
The testimony, Officer Moore, I have all day.
Obvious.
Officer Moore.
All right. Just give me a minute.
Officer Moore.
Do not rush me. You weren't there, kid. You didn't see it, so with all due respect, shut the fuck up and give me a damn minute. All right. I was called in on October 10th. I'd been anticipating some time alone with my wife, so I was a bit ticked when I got the call. I wanted to tell them to get another officer, but the recent flooding in Alden had left the station understaffed and stretched pretty thin. What my little town lacks in population, it makes up for in overzealous whining. I cannot count the times I've been called out because some old lady thought she saw a wolf or a bear or a Bigfoot. Despite their pleading, I wanted to let them handle it, but Andrea, that's my wife, told me to go. So that was that. Now, my little town lies farther from the National Reserve. Alden is the town closest to it, but some of that wilderness reaches us and makes it pretty as a postcard. So we were constantly ranked pretty high up on the list of prettiest towns, right next to some in Vermont and Maine. I used to agree with popular opinion on that. The summers out there were warm and full of every shade of green you could think of. The falls were cozy, and the local kids made a hell of a lot of profit from leaf raking. The winters suck, though, but when do they ever not? I'm stalling. Sorry. It was early in October, so the cold was creeping in, and the leaves were clogging the gutters. It had rained all that week, and all the weather reports were saying that it'd keep raining. It did rain a bit on the way to the lab, but it cleared up pretty quick. New England weather and all that. The lab was a big 4-story concrete and metal monstrosity which looked out of place in all that wilderness, like a scar almost. I got out of the car and I noticed that the lights were still on. I went up to the door, hoping that all the people there were just too deep into their work to talk to the outside world, but I got no response no matter what I did. So I called in our resident lockpick, who overcharged me before he did his job, and went in. I looked around, gave myself a tour of the facility. I knew that something wasn't quite right from the moment I stepped foot in there. It was far too quiet. There were no sounds except the pattering of rain on the roof. More signs started appearing as I worked my way through the place. A kitchen full of expired food, a spilled cup of coffee near the stairway to the 3rd floor that was feeding a mouse, an upended wastebasket near a bathroom, and a whole lot of open doors. There were little things, but each one put an extra weight on my mind. But I wasn't scared, just unnerved. And then I got to the 4th, final floor. I was walking down the hall when I felt a draft through one of the open doors. I looked in, and I saw that the largest window in the room had been shattered. I went in to investigate and immediately noticed that there were no trees near the window that were high enough to reach it. There was no debris on the floor and no glass on the inside, and the outer edges of the window frame were bent, cracked.
And that was what scared you?
So it finally talks. And no, it wasn't. It was what I found, lying in a heap off to the side, away from the window.
What did you find?
Clothes. A big pile of wet clothing just lying there soaking up the rain. That was when I started to get scared. It was an image that just struck me as unnatural. I rummaged through them and found the wallets and jewelry and money all intact, so whatever it wasn't a robbery.
Was there any blood?
None. The clothes were ripped. That was it. At this point, I was sufficiently ready to call in backup, so I went out of the room to see if I could get a better signal outside, and I was about halfway to the stairs when I saw a shadow on the wall opposite me. I turned around, and there she was, standing in a doorway, dirty and mad, like a rabid dog. The instant she saw me, she bolted. I decided to err on the side of caution and call in backup. I didn't follow her. The look in her eyes was warning enough, but I did take a look at the room where she had come from. The room had probably been one of the swankier labs, but everything, all of the equipment, the beakers and the chemicals in them were smashed and shattered. And at the center of the room was a tall metal thing. It looked like a coffin. But there were way too many sides, and the metal bulged out in weird ways. I went up to get a closer look, and I saw that the front, at least I think that it was the front, was decorated with some kind of ghoul or monster, one whose face was gone.
Could you elaborate?
There was a hole where the face used to be. It was like something had punched through it, but the edges of the metal were bent outwards.
Just for the record, do you have any theories about what might have been in that coffin?
Even after what's happened, I still don't know. And I don't want to know. Leave it at that.
And the woman?
We later found out her name was Lori Summers. but it took some doing, considering she was far too violent to let us fingerprint her. We eventually got lucky, and another officer managed to get some hair from her as she was trying to tear hers out. She didn't really tell us anything that we thought was important. When I asked her what had happened to her colleagues, she only said, they were taken. After what happened at the lab, everyone at the station, myself included, were a bit on edge. We had a bunch of missing people, the family and friends of whom were breathing down our necks within a day of rumors spreading, and our only witness wasn't in the right mental state to tell us anything. I was more unnerved than the others because I was there first. So when the call came and I heard what was going on, I felt like I was going to throw up. Over the course of one night, we received about a dozen emergency calls from Alden, all of which sounded legitimate. Alden is too small to have a real police force. The most they have is a sheriff, a car, and a few guns inside a puny former office building, so they call us for big emergencies. The call started at 8:45 when a local hunter called from his lodge to report that his friends hadn't returned from what was supposed to be a short trip. An hour later, an old woman called to say that she saw something moving outside of her summer home, and 50 minutes after that, a little girl called us to say that she had seen a monster outside her window. Her parents had gone out to calm her down, and they hadn't come back. The calls kept coming in after those first three, but the others were pretty similar. Eventually, the calls stopped. I was called in after the last one had been recorded. It was a woman. She said her name was Sandra Williams. She said that her and the rest of her town had huddled up in the high school. There's something outside, she said. We keep hearing it out in the streets. It sounds big. We went to Alden at dawn and found a school full of very frightened, very tired people. Once that was done, we all formed search parties to go out looking for the missing townspeople. I was the one in charge of the second largest group, and we took the alleyways and backyards. But all I saw was a trampoline with its mesh siding ripped apart, a few cars with their doors open, and 7 piles of clothes. All torn. All bloodless.
I see. Now, before we take a break, I need to bring something you said previously up. You mentioned having a nightmare the same night. Can you tell me anything about it?
Why? They're just dreams. What?
Just please tell us.
Why do I need to?
All I can tell you is that the scientists who were working on the coffin may have experienced nightmares similar to yours. Now, will you please recount your first dream?
All right. I was standing in some kind of field or plain, surrounded by trees on all sides. It was dusk, so the light was getting dim, but I could still see the ground beneath me and the horizon. I knew something wasn't right almost immediately. It was so quiet, the air didn't move, there were no signs of life all around me, and I got this feeling that the place, wherever the hell it was a dead place. A place where nothing could grow or thrive. I started walking, but the ground never moved when I did. It was like I was walking in place. And then a shadow fell over me. And I got this feeling of being watched from someplace high up. I looked up, and there, above me, where the sun should have been, was this big, swollen tumor that moved like a heart, and as I looked, it got closer and closer, making the ground tremble as it did. Then something moved just underneath the ground, something I couldn't see, but I could still feel through the soles of my shoes, something very large, something that kept me from running. And then I heard something pierce through the quiet, something tore it up and filled my ears. I wanted to cover my ears, but I couldn't.
What did you hear?
Screaming. Men, children, women, all of them screaming like the skin was being pulled off their bodies, screaming like they had been set on fire. The tumor was right above me now, and when I looked up again, I got a good look at its surface. It wasn't a tumor. It was a mass. A mass of people, all naked, all fused to each other with their own blood and skin, all bloody and mutilated and screaming and struggling to tear themselves free as something beneath them, more people, I think, pressed up against them. And Andrea was among them. I picked her out almost immediately. I told you about Andrea. We've been married for almost 12 years now. She's the light of my life. I'd do anything for her. And to see her like that, begging and screaming like that, I'm glad the phone woke me up.
I see.
Are you married? You got a girlfriend? Boyfriend?
Not as of right now.
Then you don't know shit.
Mr. Moore, we're not done yet. Please sit down.
I'm taking a smoke.
Mr. Moore. The next testimony was given by Sandra Williams, who recounts her night in the school.
I'm not a heavy sleeper. I've been living alone for about 5 years, and I guess I'm a bit of a paranoid. Even out in Alden, which is by all accounts totally nice and pleasant, I never felt exactly safe at nighttime. I don't know, maybe it was just how close to the woods my house was. I've never been a big fan of the great outdoors. I just don't like the idea of being alone out there in the dark. Even before that night, I heard things near my backyard, and the constant mention of wolves and bears and snakes didn't help either. So, I guess my paranoia paid off. It was around midnight when I woke up. My house is a little one-story place with a big backyard. I'd heard and seen animals in there before, raccoons and cats mostly, but what I heard moving around in the dark sounded a lot bigger. I got up quickly, got my socks on, and went to the window in my bedroom. I didn't see anything but a tree trunk, so I went to the back door and looked out. It was so dark out there. The trees grow pretty tall out there, so the moon was hidden, and my porch lights were getting up there in years, so they weren't as bright as they used to be. So when I turned them on, they barely lit up the porch. I couldn't see anything out there, so I thought that maybe whatever it was got scared off and moved on or something. I had just started to go back to bed when I heard something bump into the side of my house, farther away from the backyard, near the bedroom. A second later, the window in my bedroom shattered and I ran out the front door as fast as I could. I tried my neighbor's house, but they were gone for a week and I had left my car behind, so I ran all the way to town. I got to the sheriff's office and told him what had happened. He promised that he'd send someone to check out my house and had me wait and fill out some paperwork and give a statement. So he sent someone out and I sat back and waited. But the officer didn't come back. And then the calls started coming in, one after the other, each one making the sheriff more and more stressed. I tried to ask him what was going on, but he just told me to wait at the station while he went out and looked things over himself. Honestly, I didn't expect him to come back, but he did. He came back into the office, clutching his side and huffing like an asthmatic. I went over to see if he needed help, but he grabbed my shoulders and said, "Sandy, something's happening here. Something bad. We need to go to the school and meet up with the others. Something's out there, and it's taking people." As you can expect, what he said made my heart leap into my throat, and I beat him to the car. We rode in silence, with me staring out the window, taking in the empty houses and cars. A few times I thought I saw something moving in the alleys and on the rooftops. I tried to dismiss them as just shadows and my exhaustion kicking in, but after what happened, I think that whatever it was that came into our town was following the car. Our town has a school that had obviously been designed by someone who thought that Alden was going to become some massive city. It's a big 4-story brick building with a lot of very tall windows. We were able to fit most of what was left of the town in the gym. Everyone looked scared and tired, and the mayor looked like he was about to have a heart attack. Everyone was just standing around, looking worried or crying because someone they knew or loved had gone missing. I wasn't feeling very talkative, so I left the main group and wandered over to a nearby window. Everything was so still. There wasn't a breeze. There wasn't a sound from outside. It was like someone had pressed the mute button on the world. I had even tuned out the people in the gym, trying to just get a hold of myself. I didn't bother trying to see who was or wasn't there, but I later learned that out of 1,000, only 523 people were left. A few hours passed and my eyes started to get heavy. Everyone else had quieted down and were just milling about, looking unsure of what to do. The families were all clustered together, trying to comfort each other. The full weight of what had happened hit me right then, I think, and I just leaned against the window as my knees got weak. Outside, the moon was hidden by clouds and pretty low on the horizon. It was that time of night when dawn wasn't too far away, but it still wasn't light out. The window overlooked both the playground and street which passed by the school. I decided to stare out into space and try to keep myself calm. I kept telling myself that help would come soon, but I honestly didn't know if that was true. Maybe the calls hadn't gotten through to the real police. Maybe they didn't believe us, or maybe whatever was out there in the darkness had gone to Greenvale first. That last thought made me want to throw up. I was about to go ask someone for their phone when I saw something outside move. I didn't see all of it, but I saw how big it was, and how... I honestly can't really find a word to describe how its silhouette looked besides wrong. I couldn't spend too much time trying to piece together what I had seen. The thing, whatever it was, had found us and was right outside the school. I alerted everyone, and they all set about going into the depths of the school to lock the doors and barricade the windows with whatever they could find. I commandeered a phone from someone and called the police in Greenvale. After about an hour, the people who had fortified the school came back, and we all sat, huddled together in the dark, listening. I honestly didn't expect to hear anything. It was getting lighter outside, and I guess I was remembering all those childhood stories where the monsters vanish at sunrise. But that wasn't the case. Just as the morning bird song was starting, we heard one of the barricades near the gym break. I was one of the people who got to the barricade first. I saw the thing push the tables away from one of the windows near the main entrance. Again, I didn't see all of it, but I did see 3 hands clawing at the table, pushing it and splintering it with punches. I was close enough to see that the hands were bloodied, the skin in tatters, the nails ripped off, bits of glass stuck through the palms. But I never heard a sound from outside. No breathing, no grunting, no talking. The hands just kept coming at the table. Someone, a man who I think must have been a teacher, had found a fire extinguisher somewhere in the building, so he tried bashing at the hands. He actually broke some fingers. I could hear the bones breaking from where I was. It took a few hits, but eventually the hands drew back through the window. And that's when the smell hit me. I swear to you, it stank like the world's biggest infected cut. It was horrible. Reminded me of maggots and pus and rotting meat. The thing left us alone after that, but we could still hear it moving around the school, so we were all on edge even after the police came. I'm honestly surprised that none of them got attacked too. I haven't gone back home yet. I don't think I can after what happened. I have a friend who still lives there, and she says that the whole town feels like a tomb, and everyone who still lives there can feel how wrong the whole place is. She tells me that everyone there looks tired out and afraid. She says she's been having bad dreams, although she won't tell me what they're about. She says that even the policemen who are stationed there are just as uneasy as the people who chose to stay. I'll have my friend get my things for me. She's going to move away, and I think I'll join her. Alden isn't safe. I think it needs to just fade away.
This next testimony was given shortly after Sandra Williams's. Not long after her testimony was recorded, several officers stationed in Aden were found in comatose states near wooded areas. Near them were found several strange clusters of organic material which was found to emit a noxious gas in large quantities. Most of these clusters were burned, but several were taken for examination. Please take your seat and, please state your name and occupation for the record, sir.
My name is Herbert Halsey. I'm a coroner and microbiologist working at Quantico. I was brought in to study the mounds found in Alden.
All right. My next question was going to be, what were you called in for? But I can see that you've beaten me to that, so what can you tell us about the mounds?
Well, some people came into my office one day and told me that there was something that I needed to take a look at. At first, I thought it would be a standard autopsy or something like that, but when they shepherded me to a decontamination shower in a hazmat suit, I knew I was in for a day.
Sure it was. Now, can you tell me about the mounds?
Of course. When I first saw them, I wasn't honestly sure whether or not I was being pranked. I mean, they looked like big old piles of offals just plopped into trays. But then I got closer, and let me tell you, I decided to drop what I was doing to examine them. I mean, I don't mean to get my hopes up, but what I found will probably get me in a few medical papers, maybe some of the big ones like the New England Journal of Medicine. I mean, how many...
Sir, could you please describe the mounds?
Oh, yes, of course. Well, they were large and red and covered with fine white hairs. They were soft to a degree and filled with little holes like a shower head. And their bases had a few dozen offshoots that looked like, well, like veins and arteries.
So the stuff was... flesh?
Yes. I ran it through a few dozen tests, took a look at it under the microscope, all that stuff. And I found that it was composed mainly of dog, deer, bobcat, several types of birds, and an unknown substance that I've yet to identify. I found various animal organs inside of the thing when I cut it open, but all of them had been, well, I guess the scientific term is assimilated. They had been assimilated into one mass. But it wasn't some bizarre case where the organs had rotted and putrefied and turned into a slurry. No, it was whole, and it was functional. Everything needed for an organ to work was in place. There was no damage. The different parts had been blended together seamlessly.
What was its function?
I found a strange, very volatile liquid inside of the organ, one which reacted to oxygen in a very odd way. You see, I took a sample and put it under an electron microscope. When I took a look, I discovered that the cells within the liquid were actually multiplying. Within a few hours, my petri dish was filled with little red clumps which had a cellular and biological structure like I'd never seen before.
I see. And how fast did they grow?
Fast enough so that they spilled out over the petri dish and started to spread over the counter, and I had just left the office for a few hours. Of course, we had to burn the samples after that happened, but it was for the best.
And the mounds?
We recorded what we could, froze a few samples, and burned the rest. It was excreting spores that probably would have had dangerous effect had we not decontaminated the whole damn place.
Well, thank you for your testimony, Dr. Hazley. You may leave now.
Oh, trying to get rid of me quick, huh? You got another interview coming up?
Yes. He'll be back from his smoke break soon. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Same here.
Welcome back, Officer Moore.
Yes, hi, whatever. Let's just finish this. You want to know what happened on the 23rd and 24th, right?
Yes.
Fine, just let me leave after this.
I think that can be arranged.
Good, this place stinks like a hospital. I don't like to be out after dark anymore.
Could you please...
You know that what was out there wasn't human, right?
You've indicated that, Officer Moore, but I don't believe in monsters, at least not the kind you're talking about.
That thing wasn't human, kid. There's evidence to support my theory. Like what Sandra Williams saw that night in the school, she told me in vivid detail.
She said it was dark.
No, the sun was already up.
She might have been hallucinating.
For what? We tested her. She came out clean of any mind-altering drugs, and her fellow townspeople corroborated her story. We tested them all, and no one was on anything, so that's out the window. Try another, kid.
Maybe the scientists were contaminated by some kind of mind-altering spore from the coffin, and they just went crazy and ran off.
That's almost a comforting thought, but if that were the case, then did the same thing happen to the people in Alden? I asked the people who got a hold of that coffin to check it for anything like that, and do you know what they concluded?
That there were no spores.
That's right, no spores. Not even the slightest trace of mold or fungus. They told me that coffin barely had dust on it. So what would make a building full of respectable, sane people strip and run off into the woods? Were they on drugs too, huh?
Maybe they were scared?
Scared? Scared so bad they jumped out of their clothes?
I don't know. Let's wrap this up.
All right. I was called in after a bunch of my fellow officers were found in comas up in Alden. Comas. I don't honestly know what the chief was thinking sending them up there. It's not like whoever took the people was just going to come waltzing out of the woods and give itself up, and I highly doubt that anyone left in Alden had the spirit to riot or start shit with each other. So the officers, their names were Tony Rhodes, Claudio D'Amico, and Curtis Parker, if you want to know, ended up in comas near a bunch of meat pods or whatever the hell they were, and that got most of my higher-ups off their asses, and they actually tried to do something. They called me and a bunch of others in to do a search of the woods. They brought the dogs, plenty of firepower, and the helicopter with the big-ass searchlight, the whole 9 yards. We split up into groups of 2 and spread out with the intent of going in a grid pattern. Me and my partner, a guy named Bill Lincoln, who was as old and experienced as I was, found ourselves alone pretty quick. We tried the usual things to keep away that uneasy feeling when you're alone in the wilderness. We joked and talked about our favorite movies and our loved ones, but our words ran out after a while, so we walked in silence. It was the silence, I think, that started getting to me. I've been in the woods, in the reserve, plenty of times. There was always animal activity. But not that night. That night, all I could hear were our footsteps and the wind moaning through the trees around us. It was like whatever had settled there had driven the animals away. Bill and I were quite a ways in when we heard something coming at us from the undergrowth to our left. We readied our guns and aimed them where we thought the attack would come from. I can still feel the tremor in my hand when I think of that moment. I was petrified, waiting for the boogeyman to lunge out from the shadows, wondering if I could fire the gun. But as it turned out, I didn't have to. The thing that bounded out of the undergrowth was a deer, a big buck with one of its antlers snapped off. It was gone just as quickly as it had come, but the fear in its eyes told me that the thing was close. Another few steps, and we passed a canopy and came to a place where the trees had been bent and cracked, and the ground was torn up and covered in tracks, some of which looked just like the marks of bare feet and hands.
What did you do then?
I did my job and called it in. Now I was content to just stay put and wait until everyone grouped up. All that went out the window when I heard something ahead of us, not too far away, but far enough so that we had no clue where it was coming from. Now I was content just to stay put and wait until everybody grouped up, but all that went out the window when I heard something ahead of us, not too far away, but far enough so that we had no clue where it was coming from. It was a girl. A little girl. She was screaming. Do you have any younger siblings?
Yes. A brother.
You ever break a bone when he was little?
Yeah. We were at a Walgreens, he slipped on some ice, broke his arm in 2 places.
Do you remember how he screamed?
Yes.
The sound that I heard that night from out of the darkness was 1,000 times more agonized than that. It was a little girl screaming like every bone in her body was getting ground to paste. The screaming kept going, and both of us were looking around, and neither of us knew where the hell it was coming from. And then Bill screamed. What happened next happened so fast, so damn fast. 1 minute he was beside me, his gun was drawn. The next minute he was on his back, his gun gone and his body being dragged into the darkness with more speed than I thought was humanly possible. He was gone before I could try to help, but I did see something in those seconds before he was gone. I saw 2 hands clutching Bill's ankle. One with painted nails. One with a wedding ring. It was stupid, but I just stood there after it happened. I couldn't wrap my head around what had just happened. I didn't see where the hands ended or where they had come from or how they could have dragged poor Bill away like that with as much speed as they did. It felt like someone had sucker punched me. I should have reacted faster. Maybe I could have gotten a shot off, scared the thing away. Again, maybe not. I was only really brought back to Earth when I heard Bill start screaming from somewhere nearby, and unlike the girl, he kept on screaming. And I was able to get a good read on where he was, so I ran after him.
Your fellow officers said they found you near the main road. Is that where you went?
No, I followed the screaming deeper into the woods. Got some nasty cuts from the brambles, stumbled over roots, nearly broke my neck a few times, but I didn't care. It had just been such a long month. Month of waking up from nightmares, of listening intently to the local radio, wondering if I'd hear about more disappearances, of wondering if whatever had taken those scientists had seen me in the lab, if I was gonna come home to find it waiting in the darkness for me, or maybe coming back home and finding a window broken, and a pile of ripped clothes belonging to my wife. Now I was gonna get some answers. Now I was gonna get some answers. At least, that's what I thought. Bill kept screaming, and the louder it got, the more afraid I became. But I kept on running until I burst through a cluster of trees and found myself in a clearing. Well, it used to be a clearing. When I got there, it looked more like hell itself had oozed up from the earth. Those mounds you guys found, the ones made from animal parts, they were everywhere. They were all growing from animals who had their stomachs opened up and their guts stretched out over the ground. There were so many of them, it must have been most of the reserve's animal population in one place. The ground was completely covered in them. When I got closer, I saw that their muscles and tissue, their skin and bones, they'd all been ripped out and woven together like a carpet. And the mounds were all moving, pulsing like hearts. I could hear them from all of them together at the same time. And the animals? The animals were still alive. I saw them move and twitch. I could hear them trying to breathe. I saw the moonlight reflected off their eyes. They couldn't have been alive, but they were.
Officer Moore, please calm down.
That's why the woods were so silent. All of the fucking animals were plastered together in that clearing and turned into a living carpet. I could still hear their lungs trying to work and those tiny little whimpers they made.
Mr. Moore?
And at the center of the clearing, surrounded by these huge throbbing mounds, was a pond that stank like piss and blood and other things, a pond where all the juices from those animals collected. I heard Bill from across the way and I looked, and there he was, being dragged to the pond by it looked like a tentacle or a tail. But when I looked closer, I saw that 2 hands that had grabbed him, then 2 more, then a dozen more, and then I saw arms, arms of every skin color, and wet muscle, and dripping intestine. The thing that had hold of him was made of human parts, and it was moving. Bill screamed for help. He screamed like a child, like a baby when it gets delivered. He begged and cried and howled as he was dragged closer to the pond, and I just stood there and watched. And then I saw something in the pond move, something big. Something that twitched and moved like every part of it was living. A leg, at least that's what I think it was, came out and grabbed hold of the ground with 1,000 fingers. Another followed, then 4 more, and then the rest of it came out. Have you ever seen a person go into shock? Sure, yeah, I have too. But I never actually experienced it before that night. But when that thing surfaced, I just felt my whole body go cold. It looked like a spider and a crab and an octopus all at the same time, but every part of it was made from human remains. Legs with their feet still attached, and arms with their hands intact dangled below it, twitching and grabbing at nothing. Its back was made from bones, spines, femurs, whole fucking skeletons, all bound by tendons and other stuff. In between the cracks in its hide, I saw organs. smaller limbs. The thing which had a hold of Bill was, I think, the thing's tongue. I don't know. I don't know. I used what I had left of my strength to run the other way as fast as I could. It ate Bill. I know it did. Officially, he's been reported as missing, but they're never gonna find his body. They may find his clothes, though. If they ever find that clearing, and if they do, they're not gonna leave to report back. I quit after that night. Packed my things and left with Andrea, and didn't say a word to anyone. I'm not guilty about that. I had to get out, had to protect my wife. I used to think that the world was simple. That bad shit happened and we had to live with it, that the universe was one big clusterfuck of bizarre coincidences. That there was nothing supernatural, no boogeymen, no monsters that didn't look human. But I know better now. Listen to me, kid. If you have any say whatsoever, you'll get your bosses to go into that reserve and set the fucking place on fire.
That's just... I can't believe that.
Have you seen the news, kid? I have. Seems like the people who live near the reserve have started reporting less animal activity than is normal. Pretty soon, whatever remained of the animal population is going to be gone. Fuel for whatever that thing is doing. And how much you want to bet that you'll be seeing a few disappearances in the towns that are farther away in the coming months? Take my advice. Talk to our bosses.
I think our time is up here, Officer Moore. You can go now. We'll have a car waiting when you get out.
Thank God. You remember what I said, kid. Burn the reserve. Don't let that thing spread.
As of now, 17 disappearances have been reported in towns near and around the reserve. There also seems to have been a sudden rash of nightmares, with elements much like the ones described previously, in many people in the surrounding towns, and even outside of them. These statements have been gathered in order to provide clues as to who the culprit might be. No actions, government-sanctioned or otherwise, have been taken. The county morgue can be a pretty grim and depressing place, especially on a slow, boring day. Even the simplest thing as a routine autopsy can produce results so shocking that a seasoned mortician can have their lunch jump back into their throats. Before the doctor lay an average-height, lanky, pale man. The skin of his face is pulled impossibly tight from scarring. His eyes stared blankly at the ceiling, never able to close. His mouth is permanently ripped into a smile across his face. It could be argued that his killing spree has finally brought an end to him. The police finally closed a case of the most twisted mass murderer that the world has ever seen. Maybe karma stepped in and sealed his fate. All are true.
Homicide, plain and simple. Cause of death, severe blood loss due to disembowelment.
No man can die in a burning building and not get burned, Frank.
Well, look at the guy's face. Does he look like a man anymore to you?
Hey man, are you awake?
Yeah, I am. What?
Can't sleep? I never could in a hospital bed like this. Yeah, sorry. Well, hey, what happened to you anyway? I mean, why the bandages all over your face?
I was, burned.
Damn. Well, that sucks. How did that happen?
Doesn't matter anymore, you know? What about you?
Oh man. Well, I don't have any burns, but you probably can't see that, can you? I had a bit of a car wreck. I got my leg caught and broke it. So I'm wired up to this bed. I'd say I'm fine, but the doctors want to keep me on.
You can't move at all?
What? No, I'm kinda stuck to the heart monitor and lift thing. Why?
Good.
Hey, what are you doing? Should you be getting up? I mean, you're a burn victim.
Have you ever seen a burn wound before on someone's face?
What the? What are you doing? Nurse? Nurse!
Why does everyone scream at my face? Doesn't anyone find it beautiful anymore?
Are you crazy? You can't do that to an IV. You'll kill me. You'll kill me.
Did you ever have that little feeling that you know you really shouldn't do something, but you really just can't help yourself?
No! No, help! No! 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 No!
Go to sleep. Doctors and nurses found the patient with a piece of duct tape over his mouth to prevent him from screaming or calling for help. The poor man's stomach had been ripped open by what the coroner's report would later reflect: someone's bare hands. Fingerprinted above his bed and read, "I'll be waiting. Go to sleep." Jeff walked down the empty street on the outskirts of this town that he had not visited in years. His hometown. Memories began to conflict with the feeling that constantly dominated his mind. Jeff had come to love the feeling. It was a subtle pulling now, a small tugging at the back of his mind, reminding him that he had something to focus on. That soon he would be needing to spill more blood. He walked along the sidewalk past the bus stop. This was the same bus stop that he had a fragmented memory of. The sound of wheels on concrete, a bully, knives. The feeling. The feeling was growing stronger, but the fragmented memories were coming together. Jeff remembered Randy. More accurately, Jeff remembered the hatred that he had for the boy. Randy had destroyed his family, his face. Randy had broken him. Randy was to blame. Jeff would have killed him again if it were possible. Jeff stopped. He was home. He noticed a condemned sign posted by the city on the door. The house looked vacant and derelict from the outside, but Jeff picked up the key that was always kept under the rug, which was now covered in a blanket of dirt and dust, and he entered the house. If he was the first one to get home before his parents or brother did, he always let himself in with the spare key that his folks had got for him. He looked around the house, and everything seemed preserved as if he had just left the house the day before. Not a single thing had been moved or taken down. Jeff fought back the urge to call out to his parents. He knew that he would not be getting a response. He saw to that all so many years ago. The moonlight from outside beamed in through Jeff's kitchen and faintly illuminated the counter and living room. The TV and furniture remained undisturbed. The plastic plants which added a civilized touch to the museum that was Jeff's past life. Jeff expected the power to be out in the entire house, but to his astonishment, the digital clock in Lou's old bedroom glowed an eerie blue, showing the correct time and current date.
Just go to sleep.
Was what Jeff heard in his mind, echoing, becoming faint, as he remembered everything that happened. A part of him just wanted to cry over the loss of his brother, but another part of him, the feeling, felt no remorse. As Jeff was about to explore the rest of the house, he came across his dad's liquor cabinet and pulled out a bottle of whiskey, a stubby glass, and began drinking. Who would go through all this trouble to not have the power shut off? Doesn't the city order a house which is condemned to have its power cut off and its water disconnected? Jeff thought. Jeff's mind could register that something didn't seem right, but twitching and shaking to put the pieces together. The feeling held any deep cognition at bay. Already it was 3:50 a.m. as Jeff sat in the dark, in total silence.
Jeffrey? Is that you, honey?
Jeff recognized the voice. It was soothing and gentle, all too familiar. The glass shattered to the ground. In a flash, Jeff had his knife withdrawn from his pocket, pointing it at the woman who was the first person to startle him since he was a teenager. His gaze remained fixed on her face. He knew what he was seeing was impossible. He remembered, albeit in pieces, what had happened 11 years ago. He remembered murdering his parents. And yet this woman's warm and smiling face beamed back at him. It was Jeff's mom, Margaret.
Mommy?
Jeff spoke as though he were a child who just got out of a nightmare and sought comfort from his mother.
Yes, baby, it's me.
Her words burrowed through Jeff's black heart. He seemed to remember.
I thought you were... You...
Shh. It's okay, my sweetie. You were just having a bad dream. Mommy's just fine, see?
I didn't mean to do anything to you or Dad. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Jeff, your father and I know you too well. We know you would never do anything to hurt us. The only thing you ever killed us with is your kindness.
Jeff, tears falling from his eyes which had long remained dry and near lifeless, looked over his mother's face.
Really?
Really. I'm gonna go check on your brother, and I'll come tuck you in. You just finish your drink and go lay down on the couch, son. You had a long night.
Margaret kissed her son's forehead. She gently covered Jeff with a quilt as he watched her intently.
Go to sleep.
Wait. What did you say?
She smiled once more, one last time, before vanishing just as quickly as she appeared, leaving Jeff with that last loving image and so many questions. Was that some kind of a ghost? A dream? Was it the feeling playing tricks with his mind? Jeff didn't move.
Go to sleep.
His father, Peter, came in brandishing a large metal pipe, his guts still hanging out where his son had disemboweled him. Jeff woke up screaming, gasping. He was all right, but he was still in his house. Everything was still in place. He rolled off the couch, wiped the sweat from his face. It was obvious that Jeff was going insane. He was about to head out at the crack of dawn. The phone rang.
Who the fuck could that be?
The caller ID displayed the name
Lou. Hello? Hello? Lou? Hello?
I'm coming for you, Jeff.
Who the fuck?
Jeff sat in the darkest corner of the dimly lit biker bar, hood over his head. He scans the small crowd that has gathered over the night. The bartender makes note of the night being slower than usual to one of the bar patrons. He throws a glance towards Jeff. Jeff, lost in his thoughts, continues to survey the crowd. The larger, taller man goes over to where Jeff is sitting.
What can I get you, son? Pitcher of beer, a bottle of Jim Beam. Please.
On the rocks, or just with the shot glass?
Jeff's fingers ran across the edge of the knife in his pocket. A thin cut formed on his finger, the blood reminding him of his lust for the sweet sight.
Fuckers, all of them. Not a single one of them worth the spit they're drinking. It's so simple. It would be so quick.
Uh-huh. Who? Hold on, I'll see if he's in. Phone call for Jeff. I'm looking for a Jeff. Here. Don't take forever. We need this phone.
Well, who is it? Hey! Hello? Hello?
No response. However, Jeff did find out who was calling him. At the far end of the building, a beautiful woman who was wearing a blind man's sunglasses and dressed in all black looked over at Jeff, grinning maliciously, taunting him, her iPhone glowing in her hand. She waved at him with a teasing smirk across her face. She left a few dollar bills on the bar counter and walked off with her phone. By the end of the evening, Jeff was in no shape to go back to his hellish home, so he stumbled out of the tavern and checked into a ratty motel for the night. Once inside the lobby, a beautiful woman in a red dress leaving very little to the imagination approached him.
Hey there, sweetie. Looking for something? I think I can help you find it.
Really?
Maybe I could, if you have $50 on you.
Jeff withdrew his hand from his hoodie, which he'd been using to keep them warm from the chilled night air. He placed his finger in his mouth, his teeth, pulling the cut that he'd made earlier wider open. The blood on his tongue reminded him that the previous dark-haired woman had distracted him from choosing a target at the bar, reminding him that the blood of this woman might just do for revenge. Jeff tossed the hooker a roll of bills, and they both went to his room. – 3 a.m. The noise from the late-night drivers zooming past in their cars masked the final sounds of empty passion from Jeff's hotel room. The woman moved herself to the edge of the bed to stand and get dressed. Jeff sat up as well, watching her from behind her back. His hoodie lay open on the covers beside him. Jeff eyed the knife, and the pale skin of the woman as she retrieved her clothing from the floor. His mind went from fantasy to fantasy. The knife could easily slice her throat, and he could watch her fearfully choke to death on her own blood. Or perhaps he could simply slide the knife between the ribs of her back and watch as her breathing slowed to death from her own internal bleeding.
Go to sleep.
The woman turned about to match eyes with the killer. They looked intently at one another, neither breaking the lock on each other's eyes.
Go to...
Something was wrong. Jeff was distracted. The woman, pulling on the last of her clothing, laid a kiss on Jeff's scarred mouth. Jeff's world began to swim, and things began to fade. Black.
You go to sleep, huh?
Jeff sat up with a start. He grabbed at his jacket till he realized that it was no longer on the covers next to him. He was also no longer on the covers. Jeff glanced about in all directions. He was again fully clothed, but in the kitchen of his old home. From as far as Jeff could gather, he must have been brought here again. Or the feeling was really getting to him. Was all of the other day a dream? Was he really in this house the whole time? Jeff searched for the voice that had spoken to him, expecting to see his mother again, or his decomposing father. But the voice came from a younger man, bottle in hand, and covered in rags. The young man glanced up at Jeff. It was Lou.
Lou? I can't believe it.
Believe it, bro. Man, my side still hurts like a motherfucker after you stabbed me. But there's one thing you forgot. If you're gonna stab anyone, let alone your own flesh and blood, do it in a vital area, not a non-vital, dumbass!
Jeff was almost at a loss for words. This was impossible. Of everyone that Jeff had killed over the years, he could remember Lou. Lou looked him in the eyes when he died. Jeff remembered sliding the knife into Lou's chest. He remembered the blood on the walls from his hands as he ran out of the house. Lou didn't scream or cry. Lou just watched Jeff as he died, as if he was expecting this to happen. Jeff remembered the feeling left him completely for the last time at that point. He remembered the feeling of regret.
Lou, I'm sorry that I tried to kill you. How in the world did you?
How did I stop myself from bleeding, you ask? Well...
He got up, still staggering from the tequila that he was drinking, lifted up his shirt, and showed his brother the place on his side.
While Mom and Dad were asleep, I went to our kitchen, turned on one of the gas burners, and I cauterized it. A little something you learn from watching a few episodes of ER, House, and some of those other medical shows you come across. It hurt like hell, but I'm alright.
I mean, I didn't mean...
Jeff, it's alright. I knew you were just fucking with me. Remember when you kicked those guys' asses for me, bro? That's when to kill. Not to kill your own brother. But it was an accident. You didn't mean to stab me. Don't worry about it.
So you forgive me?
Dude, of course I do. Stop worrying, for God's sake. There is nothing in the world that would stop me from loving my own brother. Love you, buddy.
I love you too, Lou.
Hey, well, I've got things to do. I'll see you soon.
Yes. Of course. Soon.
With that, lost in what he could have said, or what he could have done, Jeff stood. He met eyes with his brother again. Thoughts filled his head, thousands at a time. Had his mind not broken so many years ago at Billy's party, he might have been able to make sense of them. He might have been able to ask the questions that were still burning inside of him. He might have been able to feel something more than the memories of what his emotions should be. But he couldn't. Jeff simply nodded, turned his back, and began the walk out of the house and on to the next location. Lou saw Jeff depart into the night until his white hoodie faded from view.
But you sure as hell aren't going to love what's in store for you, you son of a bitch.
As dawn was approaching, Jeff made his way to a sleepy little house in the richer part of town. The neighbors were still sleeping. Those who were getting ready to go to work at this time of morning barely noticed Jeff. Nor did they pay any attention to him. They thought he was just a regular visitor, or random neighbor. Jeff hopped the fence of the house that he'd been laying eyes on, and made his way into the basement from outside. In this neighborhood, you could expect a very low crime rate, and everyone who lived there were honest and trusted people. But from Jeff's point of view, this was the perfect chance to satisfy the feeling. 322 Wilshire Boulevard. The owners of the house, a young couple, were looking for a babysitter at the last moment to watch their 4-month-old child. Luckily enough, they did find someone at a short notice. The babysitter was a sweet 14-year-old girl, Victoria. Cheerful, friendly, and kind. The baby boy was sleeping like a rock. After a bath, fresh diaper change, and a change into his baby clothes, the infant's head hit the pillow immediately thereafter. Several minutes later, Victoria received a call on the house phone. Wearily, she answers.
Hello? Huh? Hey, when are you guys coming home?
We'll be back around 10 tomorrow morning. I hope our son wasn't too much trouble.
No trouble at all.
Told you. Honey, you sound tired. Why don't you take a nap?
That's a good idea. I could really use one about now.
If you need us, we'll be at the Econo Lodge. You have our number.
Thanks.
Have a good night's rest, sweetheart.
Night.
Victoria casually beeps the phone to end the call, and tosses it onto the floor. She rests her body on the nicely cushioned pleather couch that is set in the baby's room, and falls asleep. Several hours into her peaceful slumber, Victoria is awakened by a noise below in the basement. Thinking it was just an animal, possibly the couple's dog, she falls back asleep, but the noise becomes louder. Victoria gets slightly more unnerved. She pulls her tired body from the couch and pokes her head out of the doorway. Silence. She returned to the couch and laid slowly back down. Listening intently, she calmed herself.
"911 emergency."
Yes, hello? I think someone's in the house.
Ma'am, you're going to have to calm down. I can't understand you.
Someone is in the house. Someone broke in.
Where are you at, sweetheart?
I'm at 322 Wilshire Boulevard. I'm babysitting tonight. I don't know.
We're sending police up there immediately. Now here's what I want you to do. Are you listening? Go and find a place to hide in the house, like the closet or pantry, and then grab something to defend yourself with.
Victoria, trembling in fear, crept from the baby's room and down the stairs of the house. So far there was no one that she could see. But the noise had come from the basement, hadn't it? She made her way into the kitchen and pulled the largest knife that she could from the drawer. Victoria, in a panic, ran to the pantry and closed the door behind her as swiftly as she possibly could, and huddled into the farthest corner that she could physically get to.
I heard him. He came out of the basement. I heard him. Please help me, please. I'm so scared. I've got a meat cleaver. I'm in the pantry.
Don't be scared, dear. I'll stay with you on the line until police arrive. In the meantime, you just hide. Who's there with you?
The baby! Oh God, I forgot about the baby.
Did you lock the baby's room, honey?
Yes.
The baby will be all right. You just stay on the line with me. Police will be arriving shortly.
Oh, I see him.
Give me the description of the assailant, dear.
I can't talk any louder. He'll hear me. I hope he doesn't hurt the baby.
You'll be fine. What is the description of the assailant?
I'm too scared. I can't. I can't.
Tell me, what does he look like?
He's wearing black pants and a white jacket or something. I don't know. Just please help me.
Jeff entered the baby's room. Toys littered the floor of the darkened room. A single beam of light crept through the slit between the curtains, cutting the room in two, separating Jeff and the infant. Jeff continued into the darkness and peered into the crib. Jeff eyed the child silently. Despite having a smile permanently carved into his cheeks, he seemed to be frowning. The infant began to cry at the horrific sight of the killer looming over him. Jeff placed the flat of his knife against the baby's face and watched as the reflection of his own grotesque features mockingly smiled back.
Go to sleep for now, kid. When you see a bit more of the world, I'll be back to save you from it.
Jeff picked up a stuffed bear from the floor around the crib to pacify the baby. The baby's hands gripped at the soft fabric as Jeff turned his back and walked out of the room. At the dreary inn in town, the married couple sat backs to each other, both breathless and exhausted. They had been fighting since the moment that the poor child's mother had put down the phone. The in-town vacation was supposed to help. It didn't.
Maybe we should just go home then.
At this hour, come on, we still have the room for the rest of the night.
I want to see my baby, Marco. Or would you prefer to just sleep in the car?
Marco stood. He'd heard all that he cared to. He gruffly grabbed his keys off the nightstand and opened the door to the small hotel room to wait for his wife. She stepped through the opening and out into the car without a word. It was 5:15 when they left, and they were rushing home as quickly as they could. In the house, Jeff saw the approaching police light beacons, and his immediate thought was that this is all over. He stepped behind the curtain of the open front window and watched for the police officer to make his move. A knock at the door.
Police! Can you open the door, please?
Jeff inched through the shadows, closer and closer to the door. Another knock.
Hello? Is anyone home? If I do not get a response, I will have to break the door down. Hello?
Jeff's fingers went back to the sharpened edge of his knife. Finally. It's been far too long since he was able to taste blood. A creak from the pantry door as the babysitter watched the scene unfold in front of her. Her trembling body drew cold as the realization that she would not be saved from this by the police like she had so hoped.
The police are here. I think they're gonna be killed. Hello, are you still there? No, please, no.
This is your last warning.
Help me, I'm in here.
Jeff heard the scream, but the blood of the police officers was calling to him. He had to satisfy the feeling. The first officer's weapons entered through the doorway to sweep the room. A bullet to the head or a tackle to the ground, a short drive to prison and the gas chamber. But Jeff had been doing this for years since he carved his mark into his family. Jeff slid his knife into the wrists of the first officer and used the tool to pull him into the house. The officer's hands twitched and spasmed, forcing the gun to fire off 2 shots, the noise waking the baby upstairs and turning the babysitter's hysterical cries into screams of pure terror. Jeff stepped into the doorway, withdrawing his blade from the officer's wrists and pushing it into his neck. His partner's wild, panicked eyes could only see the black rings around Jeff's and the gurgling choking of his dying friend. The officer, horrified by the sight, and now with blurred vision, fired his gun directly in front of him. Missing their mark, the rounds only succeeded in putting his partner out of his pain. Jeff dropped the dead body, and with a quick motion of his left hand, grabbed the side of the officer's pistol, pushing it off aim. The officer still pulled the trigger as many times as he was able. It didn't matter. The burns from the discharge against Jeff's hand only fueled his crazed frenzy. The knife found its mark in the middle of this officer's chest and sliced its way up to his chin.
Too long. That's right.
Please don't hurt me, please. I won't tell anyone. Just take the money or the baby. Please don't hurt me.
Jeff pulled Victoria to her feet by her hair. The poor girl's cries grew louder as Jeff put the point of the knife between her eyes and pressed in, slowly.
Just go to sleep. Quiet down, little guy. Or am I going to have to make you quiet?
Outside the house, a car pulled to a stop. The mother and father rushed from the vehicle to the door. Frenzied, the couple had forgotten any issues that may have arisen over the past few days between them, and all they can see now are the red and blue flashing lights and hear the cry of their baby. They rushed their way up the stairs and into the baby's room. Immediately, out of maternal instinct, the mother picked up the child to comfort it and to assure herself that he was okay. However, despite her efforts, the baby continued to cry. The family collapsed to the floor together in an embrace.
Oh, this? No, I'm just keeping an audio log, miss.
Oh, you mean so you can turn that one in, or is it like notes?
Yes, it's kind of a way that I take notes so that I can type up my report later.
Oh, that's just a bit odd. All the other police officers just had a pen and pad.
Yeah, I'm a bit too lazy for the pen and pad. Besides, miss, I'm not the police. Agent Marcus East, FBI, remember?
Yes, so much more well-mannered than the police, too.
Well, thank you, miss. I appreciate that. But I'm afraid we need to be getting to the darker part of this conversation.
Of course.
I'll try and make this quick. For my recording, and to confirm this with you, I'm just going to go over to the police reports here. Break-in at 322 Wilshire Boulevard, but it seems that all valuables are accounted for? No missing electronics, jewelry. Was that right?
That's right, but there was a small amount of cash taken from the drawer in our bedroom. $80, I think.
Right. Of course. I'm sorry to bring this up again, but I have to confirm. We have 3 victims, homicide. 2 are officers from the local police department responding to the 911 call that was placed by the 3rd victim, Victoria Brandt, who was babysitting for you on that night.
Yes. She would babysit for us when we would go out of town on weekends. Or to our sessions.
Thank you, miss. I'm sorry. We'll move on. Your son, thankfully, completely unharmed. Thank God. Was that right?
Yes.
And the only thing found was a note with Miss Brandt. Jeff, if you're reading this, know that no matter how many innocent victims you claim or how much innocent blood you shed, I'm still coming for you in the end. All of the men and women you so viciously slaughtered and disemboweled. I never did like you, you greasy-headed, grinning, smug, ignorant son of a bitch. My black eyes may look like I'm void of vision, but I'm not stupid. Just remember, the night that you creep into a poor girl's bedroom, you're gonna fall head over heels down the fucking stairs with your guts caught on the broken glass of the window I smashed you into. Tonight, when I reach you, evil will battle evil. Winner kills all, and the only one who will not get out alive is you. I'm coming for you. Signed, Jane the Killer. Miss, do you know a Jeff? Is that a friend? Someone you've seen around the neighborhood? A name from somewhere in this town? Miss Brandt's boyfriend, perhaps?
Not at all. I don't know a Jane either.
Of course. But I'm sure that the previous officers got any information about Jane. Have you seen anyone that might have been Jeff leaving the house? Heard from a neighbor where the man might be headed?
No. Agent East, shouldn't you be more concerned with who wrote that note than who it was for?
Right, you are. Right. You see, we've been tracking a son of a bitch named Jeff. Almost had him too, but like an idiot, I thought to let him wander a bit too far. Then something like this happens. If there wasn't anything else, miss, maybe I should be...
Agent East, please. You have to find these people. This person, this murderer. Green Baby died in my home, and God knows what he did to my baby.
Ma'am, please, I assure you. I've been following Jeff for a while. I'm going to find the son of a bitch.
I'm sorry. I've been crying so often since last night.
May I? Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. And if
that mockingbird won't sing, Mama's gonna buy you a diamond ring.
What? How did...
That should be everything I need, miss. And don't go to sleep.
You might not wake up.
A light rain began to fall as the nighttime was quickly approaching. The wind and splashing from passing cars helped to clean off the now, once again stained hoodie. The caked blood leaked off his clothing with the rain as it grew heavier, and formed a small river of red behind him. The feeling that had begun so long ago was gone for now, but Jeff knew that it would be back soon. He could only think clearly for a short while, long enough for the pieces to start falling into place. This woman from the bar that knew his name, the hooker from the hotel that knocked him out, the odd note that he'd found in the baby's room. Who could be following him? And if they really hated him so much, why didn't they kill him already?
Fuck. Who the fuck is Jane?
The feeling was inching back into his mind. More violence, more blood. He wouldn't be able to think soon. His hands returned to his pockets. The edge of the knife that he had already cleaned and resharpened to a razor's edge. The feeling would be too much soon. He needed help. Maybe now there was finally someone who could help him. Jeff needed to return back home. The light rain had picked up to a thunderstorm by the time Jeff reached his old house at the edge of town. A crack of thunder and a shatter of glass. Jeff was in the house. The sound of rain outside echoed through the broken window.
Hey, Jeff. Ha! I should have known you'd come back if I waited. I almost thought you'd stopped caring.
Jeff turned around, and before he could say anything, Lou took a trophy off the shelf, and a wet crack rang through Jeff's ears.
You go to sleep.
Jeff's world went black. Jeff woke up in a living room full of industrial tools and assorted drills, knives, and hammers. The room seemed to be built like a class for anyone who wanted to get into carpentry.
Where the hell am I?
I've been waiting a long time for this, Jeff.
Jeff saw as Lou's features evaporated from his face, peeling off of him in a thick cloud of smoke. The young male's skinny frame transformed into the luscious curves of a woman in a tight black dress, with oddly only solid black orbs for eyes. Pouted lips smirked at him with a familiar teasing smile.
You're the bitch from the bar!
Jane turned on a utility light, gripped it, and turned it toward herself. Her skin was pale like a corpse, and contrasted by the curled raven hair that fell to her mid-back. In a way, she was a beautiful woman, but the air about her seemed to be as ugly and dark as the aura that surrounded Jeff.
I told you I'd be coming for you in the end. Oh, and did I mention, your brother fit me like a glove. So did
your mother.
Your father.
The paper boy. But your features. I'll be glad to peel the skin off your face, Jeffrey. Finally bring your little rampage to an end.
Really now? And why would you...
Why? Why? I'll tell you why, you little piece of shit! A little town called Bellevue, Illinois. Remember it? Oh, right. You're a psychotic fuck. I guess you don't, so let me remind you. 11 years. I've been searching for you for 11 fucking years. Since I was 10. Since you told my parents to go to sleep. Since you overlooked my room. Since I mopped up all the fucking blood. You sick psychotic fuck.
You're right. I don't remember a single second of it.
You're going to regret everything that you've done to me.
You missed my throat. My face has plenty of holes in it as it is. Poor Jane the murderer. Parents are dead and she's going to bitch and whine. Your little knife.
Fuck you! What do you get off calling me a...
Please. Black eyes, that little smoke and mirrors trick. You don't do what I do without seeing some shit, lady. Demons, monsters, tall motherfuckers in the woods. It comes with the territory. Pathetic little teenager makes a deal with the devil, and that kind of deal doesn't come cheap. Oh, you need blood. A lot of blood.
The blood leaking out of Jeff's mouth dripped onto his chest and arms, granting him just enough wiggle room to slip his hands out from the restraints and vaulted his foot into Jane's stomach, knocking the woman to the ground. Before she could move to pick herself up, Jeff continued the brutal assault by throwing the wooden chair itself at her, breaking it over her back, an act that would have crippled a lesser woman.
I like your playpen, Jane.
Taking a fistful of Jane's hair, Jeff began dragging her to the wooden table at the edge of the room. In her daze, her only thoughts were that this didn't go as she had envisioned it for so many years. Her only thought was to panic.
Really? You couldn't have caught me at a better time. I've been so hungry for your blood since I saw you in that bar.
As he forced her arm in place, Jeff couldn't help but marvel at how her arm seemed to be made for the metal vise. It fit perfectly, almost like they were always intended to go together. The sound of snapping bone and torn muscles from the woman's wrist echoed through the home. Jane frantically gripped in all directions, reaching for a tool of some kind, anything that she could use to escape the unbearable pain. The first handle that she could find, she clamps her hand on and swings with all of her strength at Jeff's legs. Jeff fell to the ground from his shattered bone. Bewildered, Jane inspected the hammer that she now had clamped tightly with her left hand. Wonder quickly gave way to pain as she was snapped back to reality. Jane desperately clawed at the vise, untwisting it as quickly as she could to free her mangled hand. She stared at the now useless appendage. The device had applied so much pressure that it split the skin and crushed every bone, leaving her wrist looking like a broken balloon full of jello.
Die, you bastard! Die!
Blood leaked from the walls, more than should have been possible to be in Jeff's body. The thunderstorm outside of the house churned the skies above, the clouds forming an opening. These were no longer two people. These were demons at war with one another. A stray bolt of lightning ignited the attic of the old home. The walls transformed from dripping blood to a putrid-smelling inferno. Jane stepped back from Jeff's twitching body, leaving him broken in a pool.
Fucking bitch.
Don't go to sleep, Jeff. I need you awake for this.
Jeff picked himself, shaking, off the ground. Putting pressure on his leg caused a sickening crack. The pain from it was blinding, but not as blinding as the feeling was at this point. Fuck the tools. The power tools, the saws, the hammers. Nothing would satisfy Jeff like this would. He withdrew the knife from his pocket.
I'm not going anywhere.
You took my life, Jeff. You took it away from me, and this moment is all that I could think about for the past 11 years.
I haven't taken it yet. Give me another minute.
Jeff limped slowly towards Jane. He had been crippled by the hammer, and his blood loss had turned his vision into a blur. Jane rose her arms from her sides, and the room around them seemed to be shifting, darkening. The whole house was becoming Jeff's personal hell. His mother and father stood beside Jane, just as he remembered them. Gutted, bloody, dead.
Why did you do this to us, son?
We didn't lie to you. We never did. We were trying to protect you, honey.
You could have been with us, Jeff. We're happy and safe where we're at, bro. But sadly, you'll be cleaning toilets in hell.
Cut after cut from his own family. They surrounded him, chanting, cutting him deeply with saws and screwdrivers from the carpentry house of horror. Jane laughed in Jeff's face.
Do you see the pain? Everything you've lost? What you've done to yourself? Do you feel what I felt, Jeff? This is what you've done to everyone else. This is the monster that you've let your insanity become. This is...
You give me way too much credit, Jane. I don't give a shit.
You...
Go to sleep.
The house burned. On the cold metal slab of the morgue, before the doctor, lay an average height, lanky, pale man. The skin of his face is pulled impossibly tight from the scarring. His eyes stared blankly at the ceiling, never able to close. His mouth is permanently ripped into a smile across his face. This is Jeff, also known as Jeff the Killer.
Homicide, plain and simple. Cause of death, severe blood loss due to disembowelment.
Frank, you can't be serious. You heard that they pulled this guy from a fire, right?
I read the police report, yeah, but there's not a single burn mark on the guy. Do you see the charring? 'Cause I sure as hell don't.
So, let me get this straight. You're suggesting that someone burned his clothes, and then dressed him in them, and then dumped his body in the house after the fire?
I'm suggesting this guy was in one hell of a knife fight before dying of blood loss in that house.
No man can die in a burning building and not get burned, Frank.
Well, look at the guy's face. Does he look like a man anymore to you?
Jeff's eyes refocused on the doctor's face. Nine months later, again in the cold, lifeless morgue with two of the most criminally insane humans ever to walk the earth. In front of the coroner lay a beautiful, young, black-eyed woman. Dead. When the police found her body, she was lying on a table, hands and feet chained to it, with a message scrawled on the walls. I'll be waiting. Go to sleep. Cause of death? Childbirth.
Hey everyone, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I want to tell you thank you so much for watching tonight's video or for listening to tonight's episode of the podcast. Also, hitting the subscribe button on that podcast and or that YouTube video channel, because whenever you do that, it helps me be alive, which I very much appreciate, because if I'm not alive, I am... And finally, as always, I want to thank everybody who is on my Patreon list. Especially, I want to give a huge thank you to Triller Tier Jackal, Brian Figueroa, Ethan Leon, Polaris Prospect X, Lake Rattler, Viceroy Scorn, Disciple, Delaney Melton, Strategy, Wolf Jameson, John G. Luna, SullyMan, Juan Mendoza, Rock Bottom Smasher, Elias Nahero, Brandon Mendoza, Sneck, Brimstone Pendulum, Caltuna, William Wellington, Scruffy the Janitor, Victoria Schwartz, Victoria Miles, Aaron, Emma, Kemza, Brenda Crow, Elijah Munson, LaQueda Canizales, MrCreepyPasta Peebus Pleaser, Travis, Smiley the Psychotic, Richard Sundell, Buddha B, Dante Kinkade, Simba's Bloody Mojo, Mephistopheles, Cursepox Primarch, M, Jettis Pet, Verbal Horror, Jay Kearns, Mike, Himbo Jerry, Crusader Chocobo, Corbin Dallas, Estebean, Our Minute Second Time, Seclude, Salty Surprise, Red Shadowcat, Turtleman, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Dirt Diver 030, Voice of Sand, Psychomel, Melted Lake, Tally Sue, Cronut 509, Stricken, Freddy Krueger, Hazy Nephew, Tommy Wall, Tommy Walters, Acid System, Sky Harbor, Nico Kyle, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Paulson, Corey X Kenshin, Diana Kraus, Jordan Humble, a man of many names, and every single one of you that's down there in the description, every single one of you that is able to give even $1, man, I cannot thank you all enough. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys are wonderful. You really do make my life easier, and I appreciate it greatly. To all of you out there, have a wonderful evening and sweet dreams.